You are now watching The Meech.
It's hard to believe the Kirby series is celebrating its 30th anniversary, from the humble monochrome beginnings of Kirby's Dream Land to being tickled pink for Kirby's Adventure and Beyond. The Pink Puffball has had many adventures, my favorites being hands down his adventures on the Wii and the Nintendo 3DS. Kirby's epic yarn was quite a departure from what you'd expect in a Kirby game, but it's a wonderful game with excellent mechanics, level design, and a beautiful presentation. But if you wanted a more traditional Kirby game, Kirby's Return to Dreamland was just that. It took the concept of a Kirby game and evolved it for the modern era. Nowadays, it might not stand out as much, but the sequels on the 3DS improved on the formula in every way imaginable. Kirby Triple Deluxe is similar, but more refined with even better level design, and mechanics such as moving between the foreground and the background, and Kirby Planet Robobot is a pure extension with a really cool tech theme and excellent locations. All these games are fantastic, easily some of the best 2D platformers I've ever played. But the thing with the Kirby series is that it's only consisted of 2D platformers for nearly 3 decades. Some may think Kirby Star Allies was the breaking point. I personally wasn't fond of the game, but Kirby jumping into a dimension beyond the second and another dimension was a long time coming, and the great news is that to celebrate the big 3-0, Kirby took the Warp Star into the third dimension. When Kirby in the Forgotten Land was revealed, it was exciting to see a 3D adventure for the first time. Being a huge fan of the Kirby series, I was confident the game was going to be excellent. 3D platformers are my favorite kinds of games, and Forgotten Land looked great. What I was expecting was a great 3D platformer, and what I got was an experience I never could have imagined. Why is that? Kick back, relax, and grab a maximum tomato as we take a look at Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Our story begins with Kirby taking a morning stroll only to encounter a vortex destroying Dreamland. He then gets overtaken by the vortex and ends up in a new world. It then turns out a group known as the Beast Pack are capturing Waddle Dees. Kirby then teams up with a blue chinchilla-like creature named Elfalin to save the Waddle Dees. Considering this is a Kirby game, there's much more to the story, but considering that's a big part of the experience, I'm not going to spoil anything, and this is just the plot at a surface level. I always love when games have the heroes and villains team up. It's really cool seeing the perspective of the main villains going up against a stronger power, but as with any platformer, a great story will enhance the experience, but gameplay is the most important factor. When it comes to 3D platformers, there are 2 kinds of them. There are the open world ones, with a selection of levels that are large in scope, that have collectibles as a main objective, Super Mario Odyssey and Banjo-Kazooie being great examples of that. And then there are the linear 3D platformers. These are the ones that have more levels, but ones that are structured to have a clear goal in mind. Most 3D platformers take this route, with notable examples being Crash Bandicoot, the Super Mario Galaxy games, and Super Mario 3D World. And Kirby and the Forgotten Land took the linear approach. Considering the kind of game Kirby is, many wondered how the series could adapt into 3D. Kirby's movement is at its core the same as it's always been. His main abilities are being able to inhale enemies and float. To prevent Kirby from mindlessly being able to hover over and essentially skip levels, Kirby can only float for a limited time, similar to Super Smash Bros. He can also attack enemies by doing the slide kick, and is given the ability to shield and dodge attacks from enemies. Kirby's movement is excellent, and it's easy to understand. The control is exactly what you'd expect, and it feels great. You may think Kirby's moveset is a bit basic, but that's where the copy abilities come into play. These are a major part of Kirby games, where Kirby isn't gray or made out of yarn, and Forgotten Land is no exception. The way they're handled is similar to how they've always been, but they allow for even more moves thanks to the game being a 3D platformer. You'll be able to go full-on Link with the sword now, allowing for a spin attack. And for the spike ability, you can turn Kirby into Kirby Mari Damashi. And as always, there are new abilities as well. My favorite being the Ranger ability, which gives Kirby a zapper. These abilities are expanded on further because you can actually upgrade them. Not only do the upgrades make the abilities more powerful, but Kirby is given even more moves. There might not be as many copy abilities as there are in most Kirby games, but all of them feel far more refined with the upgrades showcasing the full potential of what they can do. But sometimes, things can be a bit too much even for Kirby. This is where the new mouthful mode mechanic comes into play. Kirby can take on the appearance of many different things, such as cars and light bulbs, and I gotta admit, he looks pretty silly, sometimes even ridiculous. But what separates mouthful mode from the standard copy abilities is the levels are designed with the mouthful mechanic in mind. The copy abilities primarily power up Kirby and serve as nothing more than an enhancement to his abilities, but the mouthful abilities have sections designed around them in levels, allowing for some very creative and interesting design. When Kirby takes on the ability of these objects, he can do things such as racing through an abandoned amusement park and clearing up a muddy area by spitting water. First we got Kirby Mari and now Super Kirby Sunshine. We really are partying like it's the 2000s. These bring so much variety to the game, and I couldn't think of a mouthful section I didn't have a blast with. The abilities are excellent, but how is the level design? The levels in Forgotten Land may be linear, but they are quite grand in scope. Sometimes this can lead to a lot of empty sections in other games. This was an issue I had with Kirby Star Allies because there are many sections with nothing to do, but in Forgotten Land, there's always something to do. Each section has meaning. The main platforming sections primarily consist of taking out enemies and interacting with the environment, but where the level design shines the most is with how well the levels flow. Never does it feel like the mouthful sections are shoehorned in and each level feels organic. It's clear love, charm, and passion were put into the levels, and they are incredible. And guess what? This is only the design itself. Forgotten Land takes place in a world where civilization was once present, but has been lost. The post-apocalyptic theme has been done many times before, but rather than going for cliché, empty, deserted areas, Kirby in the Forgotten Land has some of the most creative theming I've ever seen in gaming. World 1 will have you explore a city that has been abandoned for years, maybe even centuries. Not only will you see the buildings and levels, but levels even take place in them. Alivo Mall takes Kirby through an abandoned mall, which eerily doesn't look far off from something like Gulfview Mall. But once I reached Wonderia Remains, I knew Forgotten Land would end up being something truly special. The theme is that of an abandoned amusement park. That alone is an incredible idea for a theme, and Forgotten Land goes all out with it. This may be my favorite location in any game I've ever played. The levels incorporate everything under the sun when it comes to theme parks. Roller coasters, picture frames, rides, it has everything. And not only does it have everything, but even beyond. The exact moment I knew Kirby in the Forgotten Land would end up being one of my favorite games was this. When it comes to nostalgia, it's different for me than you'd initially think. I don't get nostalgic for games specifically, because I can always replay them again and again. What I am nostalgic for are life experiences. Most of my elementary school years consisted of field trips to a rollerblading rink, and this level brought me back to those days. Everything about it, from the entrance to the level itself, felt like a blast from the past. And it's not specifically just because it resembles a roller rink. It reminded me of the many arcades and bowling alleys I've been to over the years. And even beyond the nostalgia factor, this is such a unique and cool theme for a location. Doing this retrospective, I've made sure not to cover too many locations in the game, because it's an experience that benefits greatly by going in blind, because the element of surprise is what keeps the game constantly fresh and exciting. But outside of a few levels that are a bit basic in theming, the locations in Forgotten Land are some of the best and most creative in any game I have played. In addition to the main levels, each world also has Treasure Road challenges. These are where you can get rare stones that you can exchange to upgrade copy abilities. Each challenge will have you use a specific copy ability, with the level centered around that specifically. They're mostly optional, but they're a lot of fun to play and showcase the potential of these abilities even more. Then we get to the boss fights. The bosses take place in arenas and actually require direct combat, considering that there are many different kinds of levels in the game. It's great that the boss fights are actual fights rather than stages, and they're an absolute blast to play. Not to mention they're incredibly cool looking as well. The gameplay of Kirby in the Forgotten Land goes beyond just being great. It's an absolute masterpiece, showcasing excellent game design in nearly every way imaginable. The game had me in a constant state of euphoria throughout the entire experience, and at the end, my mind was blown away. The presentation of Kirby and the Forgotten Land goes all out with the abandoned civilization theme, but that doesn't stop the game from being colorful and beautiful to look at. The environments have a great attention to detail. You'll see things such as old school computer monitors in a room at the mall, as well as moss in these abandoned environments. I've already stressed how great the theming is, but the overall presentation is stellar. The game is easily one of the best looking Switch games. The music is also phenomenal. There are so many excellent tracks that it's hard to list all of them, but the standouts for me were the main theme, the House of Horrors theme, and most of the boss themes. Not to mention the main theme of the game actually having some lyrics, but I can't think of a single song in the game I didn't like, and the overall sound design is excellent as well. Sound effects don't often get the credit they deserve when it comes to game retrospectives, and the ones here are placed very well and really enhance the already incredible presentation. There is only one issue with the presentation, that being the game running at 30 frames per second. 60 frames per second would have been ideal, but in the case of Forgotten Land, it wasn't as big of a deal as I expected. It's clear the main issue is just how outdated the Nintendo Switch hardware itself is, and not the game itself. But regardless, it didn't even bother me. I saw comments saying, "Why are you okay with Forgotten Land running at 30 frames per second but not Star Allies?" I'll tell you why. It's because Forgotten Land is utilizing so much of the Switch's power that it completely rendered Star Allies obsolete. This is a game that is clearly pushing the hardware and has an actual reason to be 30 frames per second. Not like a run-of-the-mill 2D platformer. The gameplay and presentation are phenomenal, but where the game can shine even further is with the amount of things to do in the game. Kirby and the Forgotten Land's main adventure will take about 15 hours to complete, but if you're going for 100%, there's a lot of replayability. Reaching the goal is only one of the objectives, because each level has additional missions to complete, very similar to that of the Super Mario Galaxy games. But you'll only find out what the additional objectives are once you complete a level. Some may prefer to 100% a game in one go, but any opportunity to revisit the levels is great in my opinion. What I'll do is I'll usually beat a game, and then 100% it after completing it. This is where most of the challenge will come from. Like with most Kirby games, Forgotten Land is on the easier side, even in wild mode, but not to the point where it becomes boring. You'll always need to think about what you're doing while playing the game, and it's never a mindless experience. In addition to the main game, there's quite a bit of post-game content. To avoid spoilers, I won't get into detail about what exactly it is, but I loved it and it provided an element of challenge that I was looking for. On its own, Forgotten Land already has an ample amount of content, but with Forgotten Land shaping up to be a near-perfect game, of course there are extras. If free updates will be added is a sure sign I will despise a game, collectible trophies are a sure sign that I will love a game. There are all kinds of trophies for Kirby to collect, very similar to how Super Smash Bros. Used to be. I just love admiring them, and you can even display them in Kirby's house. You also got a boss rush mode and some additional mini-games to rack up coins. So overall, there's quite a bit of content in the... What the... PD, what's happening, my man?
Demeech, a little birdie told me you're playing Kirby in the Forgotten Land. That, of course, being me after getting the notification you were playing it.
You're dang right I've been playing it. Easily one of my favorite Switch games.
Same here! Can I play? 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 Can I play?
You know what? Of course. Just grab the Pro Controller next to the Keurig.
Thanks!
Alright, brother, let's do this. Kirby in the Forgotten Land has a 2-player co-op mode where one player will control Kirby and the other Bandana D. The difference being Bandana D cannot use copy abilities, but regardless, it's easily the best multiplayer in any 3D platformer I've played. The levels are linear, but things don't get cramped, and the multiplayer does a great job accommodating for 2 players. There's always a good amount of space, and it never feels like one player has to do all the work. Playing the game in multiplayer is just as fun as single player, even with a patronizing parrot. Though considering you suggested playing the game together, it can't be that bad.
You know it! This game isn't great, it's just incredible!
So far we've established Kirby in the Forgotten Land is a masterpiece in every category. So what's the verdict? Kirby in the Forgotten Land gets the ranking of creative, ambitious, passion put into it, amazing, incredible, beautiful work of art, masterpiece of a game, diamond-encrusted platinum treasure. What I expected was a great game, and what I got was a masterpiece. Has it dethroned Super Mario Odyssey as my favorite game of all time? Both games have different strengths, but from an objective standpoint, you know what? Yes. Kirby in the Forgotten Land is everything I love about Odyssey and then some, and our Kirby meal will continue next week as we take an analytical look at Kirby's Dream Buffet. But until then, let the celebration of Kirby begin!